The day my wife thought she won $500 million, she threw me out of our home, ended our marriage, and told everyone she didn't need me anymore. But there was one thing she didn't know: the winning ticket was never hers. And by the time she discovered the truth, it was already too late. One phone call turned an ordinary marriage into a national spectacle. A woman believed she had won $500 million, and before the sun set, she threw her husband out of the house. But there was one detail she never bothered to check, and it would destroy everything she thought she knew. The call came on an otherwise afternoon moments later. Excitement exploded through the home. The lottery ticket in her hands matched the winning numbers: $500 million. The kind of fortune that transforms strangers into celebrities overnight. Friends called, relatives celebrated, neighbors rushed over with congratulations. Everywhere she looked, people treated her like the luckiest woman in America. At first, her husband smiled beside her. He congratulated her, shared her excitement, and imagined what their future might become. For years, they had faced challenges together. He assumed this miracle belonged to both of them. Within hours, everything changed. The attention grew louder. The praise became constant, and with every compliment, something inside her seemed to shift. Gratitude gave way to entitlement. Partnership gave way to possession. She stopped speaking about their future and started speaking about her future. Then came the moment nobody expected. Standing in the very home they had built together, she told him to leave. No discussion, no hesitation, just a cold declaration that she no longer needed him. The room fell silent. Shock spread across every face. He did not argue. He did not shout. Hurt and confused, he gathered a few belongings and walked out with dignity intact. Meanwhile, whispers spread through the community. Most people assumed she was right. After all, everyone believed the ticket belonged to her. But while everyone celebrated her victory, a single piece of paper hidden in a drawer was about to change the entire story. To understand how everything unraveled, you have to go back a few days before the jackpot changed their lives. For the husband, buying lottery tickets was never an obsession. It was simply a small ritual, a harmless habit that added a little excitement to ordinary weeks. Every now and then, he would stop at a convenience store on his way home from work, purchase a ticket and tuck it away. He never expected to become rich. Like millions of people, he played for the possibility, not the promise. On the afternoon that would eventually change everything, he purchased several tickets using his own money. Among them was the one that would later become worth $500 million. After returning home, he placed the tickets in a secure drawer where he often kept important documents and receipts. Then life continued as normal. There were bills to pay, responsibilities to manage, and long workdays to get through. The tickets became an afterthought. His wife barely noticed them. At the time, they seemed as insignificant as countless others that had come before. Then the winning numbers were announced. The husband was busy and hadn't yet checked every ticket. But sometime during the excitement surrounding the drawing, his wife discovered the stack inside the drawer. When she compared the numbers, her heart nearly stopped. One ticket matched. Suddenly, everything around her changed. At first, the confusion may have seemed innocent. The ticket was in her possession when the numbers were verified. Friends arrived. Family members called. Questions came faster than answers. But instead of clarifying where the ticket came from, she allowed a different version of events to take shape. Then she began repeating it. She spoke as though she had purchased the ticket herself. Relatives congratulated her online. Friends flooded social media with celebratory messages. Photos, comments, and posts spread across the internet. With every new congratulation, the false story became stronger. That husband watched it happen and assumed the misunderstanding would eventually be corrected. Surely someone would ask questions. Surely the truth would come out. Surely the woman he had shared his life with would set the record straight. But as the attention grew, something disturbing happened. The wife stopped correcting the story because she had started believing it herself. The public praise became addictive, and the fantasy of being the sole owner of $500 million became impossible for her to resist. The husband expected the truth to come out naturally. What happened next proved he had badly underestimated the power of money. If the lottery win changed their circumstances, it changed her behavior even faster. Within days, the woman who once discussed every major decision with her husband was making plans without even mentioning his name. Lawyers appeared. Financial advisors were hired. Meetings were scheduled. Future investments were discussed. Yet somehow, the man who had stood beside her for years was excluded from every conversation. The more attention she received, the more confident she became. Interviews with local media painted a picture of a woman preparing for an extraordinary future. Friends listened as she described dream homes, luxury vacations, and ambitious plans for the years ahead. In every version of the story she told, there was one noticeable omission. Her husband. It was as if he had already been erased. Then came the moment that shattered whatever remained of their marriage. A gathering had been organized to celebrate the jackpot. Relatives, close friends, and neighbors filled the room. The atmosphere was electric. People laughed, posed for photos, and talked about the incredible fortune that had supposedly transformed one family's future forever. No one expected what happened next. Standing before the crowd, the wife announced that the marriage was over. The room fell silent. without hesitation. She declared that she no longer needed her husband. The message was unmistakable. In her eyes, wealth had made him irrelevant. Some guests looked uncomfortable, others avoided eye contact. A few quietly nodded in approval. The husband stood there, stunned. Years of loyalty, sacrifice, and commitment had been reduced to a public dismissal. Yet despite the humiliation, he refused to create a scene. He refused to match cruelty with anger. Instead, he quietly gathered his belongings and walked away. For many people watching, that silence was interpreted as weakness. Soon, everyone chose a side. Most sided with the wife. After all, people are often drawn toward success, and $500 million has a way of convincing others that someone must be right. Rumors spread quickly. Gossip traveled through neighborhoods, workplaces, and family circles. Online discussions exploded across social media. Comment sections became battlegrounds. Some called the husband a burden who had been left behind. Others questioned why he seemed so calm. Viral debates generated thousands of reactions. Local news outlets amplified the drama. Public fascination grew with every passing day. To outsiders, the story appeared simple. A lucky woman had outgrown her marriage, but beneath the surface, another story was quietly taking shape while everyone else focused on emotions. The husband focused on facts. He began gathering every piece of evidence connected to the lottery: ticket receipts, store records, photographs, dates, documents, anything that could establish exactly what had happened. He wasn't interested in revenge. He was interested in the truth. Meanwhile, the wife's confidence reached new heights. Surrounded by praise and convinced that the money had permanently shifted the balance of power, she believed the story was already over. What she didn't realize was that the most important chapter had not even begun. And when his attorneys reviewed the documents, they uncovered a detail so devastating that the wife's entire dream suddenly hung by a thread. The turning point arrived quietly. There was no dramatic confrontation, no emotional outburst, and no public spectacle. Instead, it began inside a conference room where attorneys carefully reviewed the growing stack of documents the husband had collected. What they discovered changed everything. The purchase receipt matched the exact date the winning ticket had been bought. Store transaction records confirmed the payment. Surveillance footage showed the husband standing at the counter and completing the purchase himself. Every new piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. The ticket had never belonged to the wife, it belonged to him. The investigation continued. Employees from the store verified his account of events. Records lined up perfectly. Timelines matched. Witness statements reinforced the evidence. What had once appeared to be a simple disagreement was becoming an undeniable legal reality. One by one, the assumptions that supported the wife's story began collapsing. For months, public perception had protected her. People wanted to believe the fairy tale. They wanted to celebrate the woman who supposedly beat impossible odds and transformed her life. Overnight now, the facts were telling a different story. And facts are difficult to argue with. The wife quickly realized the situation was slipping beyond her control. The confidence that had once fueled her public appearances started to disappear. Questions replaced compliments. Doubts replaced admiration. The same relatives who had praised her success began asking uncomfortable questions. Friends who once defended her suddenly became silent. Reporters who celebrated her victory started investigating the details. Online, the shift was even more dramatic. Comment sections that once criticized the husband were now filled with support. Viral posts highlighted his patience and restraint. Thousands of people expressed sympathy for the way he had been treated. Public opinion swung in the opposite direction with remarkable speed. The man who had been mocked for staying quiet was suddenly being praised for remaining calm under extraordinary pressure. His dignity became impossible to ignore. But meanwhile, the wife faced increasing scrutiny from every direction. The narrative she had built so confidently was falling apart piece by piece. Every new revelation made it harder to defend the version of events she had presented to the world. Most devastating of all was the truth itself. The jackpot she had built her future around was never truly hers. For the first time since the winning numbers were announced, she understood the magnitude of her mistake. The fortune she believed gave her absolute power had become the very thing exposing her actions. But the biggest surprise wasn't the evidence. It was the decision the husband made after finally gaining all the power. By the time the truth emerged, the balance of power had completely reversed. The husband now held the strongest position imaginable. The evidence was on his side. Public opinion had shifted in his favor. The legal facts were undeniable. After everything he had endured, few people would have blamed him for seeking revenge. In fact, many encouraged it. Friends told him to make a public statement. Supporters wanted him to expose every detail. Online commentators predicted a dramatic reckoning that would humiliate the woman who had humiliated him for the first time since the lottery win. The wife found herself facing a future filled with uncertainty. The confidence that once surrounded her had disappeared. She understood what was at stake. The fortune she believed belonged to her was slipping away, along with the public admiration she once enjoyed. Desperate to repair the damage, she reached out and asked for forgiveness. Many expected the conversation to end badly. After all, this was the moment audiences had been waiting for. The final confrontation, the emotional explosion, the opportunity for the husband to settle every score. Instead, he chose something no one saw coming. He chose restraint. Rather than focusing on everything he had lost, he reflected on the years they had shared. He thought about the values that had guided him long before money entered the picture. Most importantly, he considered the kind of person he wanted to be when the story was over. Bitterness would have been easy, humiliation would have been easy, but character is often revealed through the choices that are hardest to make. The husband pursued accountability without cruelty. He sought fairness without vengeance. He allowed the truth to stand on its own instead of using it as a weapon. Ownership of the ticket was restored through the proper process, and the facts were finally acknowledged for what they were. The outcome surprised nearly everyone. What began as a story about money became a story about integrity. People who followed the drama found themselves discussing something much larger than a lottery jackpot. They talked about trust, dignity, and the way sudden wealth can expose qualities that were hidden all along. The wife believed money made her powerful. The husband proved that true strength comes from something deeper. Wealth can change circumstances overnight, but character is revealed over time. The wife believed money made her powerful. In the end, it was integrity that proved priceless. And if a single lottery ticket could expose the truth about an entire marriage, imagine what hidden tests of character are happening around us every day.